Majesty, Queen Rania, it's a particular great pleasure for me and honor to welcome you this afternoon and to have this opportunity to listen to your special message. It's a great honor and privilege, not only because everybody here respects you, knows you, but I welcome you here officially on behalf of the Foundation Board of the World Economic Forum as its newest members. We know that you will have a decisive input into what we are doing. And I'm particularly pleased that together with our other new Foundation Board member, Grâce Machel, you will certainly make sure that women play a major role or an increased role inside the World Economic Forum. Your Majesty, in my opening speech, I said a world without hope for the future cannot be a world where we build trust. Or in other words, if we will have an opportunity to build trust again in our world, then it has to be based on a world where we have hope for our future. And you, Your Majesty, you are such a hope, for you are based on your values, based on what you are doing for your country, for your region, for the world. Welcome, Your Majesty.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate.
Thank you all for your warm welcome. It is an honor to be here. This session is called a dialogue, and I hope and believe it will be a dialogue, a chance to begin a real conversation. You know, when I open my email, sometimes I'll get an alert window that says, the message sender has requested a response. Well, to the extent that I have a message today, this message sender hopes that all of you will respond. And not only here and now with me, but in the days and months ahead with the people of my region, Jordanians and Arabs, many of them young and optimistic. They are looking for a new two-way dialogue with the people of the world. It goes without saying that ours is a critical time, not simply in terms of global security or politics or economics. It is a critical time in terms of ideas, the basic ideas on which the century builds its promise. Ideas like peace with justice, equal opportunity, and tolerance for others. These values are goals, certainly ideals to aim for in the best of worlds. But let me suggest that today, peace, opportunity, and tolerance are more than goals. They are also resources, essential elements of our increasingly global system. They drive 21st century success no less than energy or technology. In that sense, peace and opportunity and tolerance are not a luxury, not the final icing on the cake. They are the very bread of life, the fuel that is needed right now for a safe, free, and prosperous world. So we need to ask ourselves, as a global community, have we invested sufficiently in these resources? And most of all, what are we doing to build trust in our values, to make them something on which all people can rely? To me, these questions are made very urgent by the hope gap that I have seen around the globe, the dangerous gulf between those people who really feel part of this new century and the many, far too many, who feel left behind. I have also been struck by the forum's interesting new survey on global trust. As we've learned, the survey finds that trust in key institutions has fallen to critical levels all over the world. The survey speaks of trust in institutions, Yet, what may be most at risk is trust in the values those organizations are supposed to represent. Think about a boy in the West Bank who powers on a computer and looks through a virtual window onto a world of peace and prosperity. Then he looks out his own window at barricades and violence and closed streets. And this goes on year after year. What's at risk for that child and other children on both sides of this conflict is trust that peace can ever be real. That is an attitude they will carry into adult life if we don't make a difference now. Or think about a young girl in Afghanistan who can finally go to school after years of exclusion. Then the school door slams shut because there are no funds for books or teachers or technology. What's at risk for this child and many others is real hope in the opportunity to share in this century. Again, that's an outlook that can shape their lives for years to come. Hope gaps like these are found in various ways in too many places around the world. Is there any doubt that these are the populations most vulnerable to those who teach despair, hatred, and violence? People who are trapped by failed hopes can easily become disillusioned and cynical about values like peace and tolerance. And cynicism is contagious. It can also affect those looking from the outside in and diminish their will to make ours a better world. Yet humanity's greatest message may be that, contrary to the cynics, trust in core values does pay off. This is something that we in Jordan really understand. We're a small country, resource poor, hemmed in by some of the world's most bitter conflicts. Development, education, health, economic growth, all these are huge challenges. In today's climate, with the Palestinian-Israeli conflict raging to our west and a potential war looming to our east, it might seem easy to write us off. Indeed, it might seem easy for Jordanians to be cynical about their prospects, to shift to low gear, to lay low, to put off our crucial reform plans until the political storms around us subside. Instead, under the leadership of His Majesty King Abdullah, we have pushed forward an accelerated model of achievement and excellence. We have decided to strengthen our trust in age-old values of hard work, peace, and equal opportunity. More importantly, we have decided not to throw in the towel, come what may. This is the genius of Jordan, and it is beginning to pay off. We see that in economic growth, over 5% in 2002. We see that in all our leading indicators, such as productivity, cash reserves, and exports. But we also see it in terms of attitude and confidence. Allow me to quote a recent newsletter published by a leading investment bank in Jordan. Investors at the Amman Stock Exchange still seem unfazed by political news, which hampered their activity in 2002, and are now trading quite enthusiastically. Ours is a leadership that devotes all its energy to make hope real. And in my journeys around the world, I have seen that same spirit in many places, especially here at Davos. I meet winners in every sphere who have the gift of making their ideas and values come to life. I believe that we now have a challenge and an opportunity to help millions around the world make their hopes real. One important challenge is to bring our values to bear on one of the worst hope gaps in the world: the gap between regions that have enjoyed the benefits of peace and those that are paying the terrible price of ongoing violence and conflict. If we are going to fuel new realities, we need to find a way to flow hope across this divide. Today, just as a pipeline connects areas rich in resources, like oil or water, with areas that lack these essential resources, a peace line is needed to bring the benefits of peace to regions in conflict. That means, for example, flowing more investment, or perhaps I should say more creative investment, into war-tired communities. New public-private partnerships can be a seedbed to grow civil society. A global commitment to opening the school doors can open minds as well. An innovative outreach like microfinance can bring solutions to the street. In Kosovo, I visited communities being rebuilt by war survivors, many of them women, using loans as small as $100. This work has the power to transform lives. Perhaps most of all, a peace line means streaming a new dialogue of tolerance and mutual respect, one that understands we all have a stake in the global system. The West-Islamic world dialogue that has begun at this forum is a major contribution. I thank Professor Schwab for his sincere efforts in making this important dialogue a reality. The idea of a peace line is just one way to think about the deep connections among us. Truly, global peace isn't something that we will get by turning on a tap. We will have to work for it, drill deep, and keep the ideas and hope flowing. The well of human creativity and capability is never empty. The resources of peace, of opportunity, of tolerance are there. I learned that best from the life of my father-in-law, His late Majesty King Hussein. He reigned for 47 years and had basically seen it all: the rise and fall of nations, the dramatic shift in alliances, the demise of great leaders. He worked for peace for several decades. Every ounce of success was weighed down by tons of disappointments. He had every right to be cynical about the prospects of peace. Indeed, he would have been forgiven if he had relabeled cynicism and called it realism. But he chose not to. In the last months of his life, the Arab-Israeli peace process had again stalled in violence. At that time, King Hussein was being treated for advanced cancer. Instinctively, he left the cancer unit and went back to work for peace at the Douai River Conference. He attended, if you recall, the White House ceremony announcing an agreement. He looked frail from his battle with cancer, but his eyes foretold a story of a moral passion that will live on long after his death. And indeed, ours is a better world because people can still trust his values. King Hussein taught me and millions of others that in the pursuit of basic values such as peace and freedom, we can never fail. We just have to keep the hope alive, continue the dialogue, and top it all up with plenty of hard work. Thank you very much.
Your Majesty, I just see in the audience Professor Elie Wiesel, whom I greet cordially, and I will ask him afterwards to make the conclusion. It's a surprise for you, but I think you are the most appropriate to do so. But before doing so, we have time for one or two questions, and I may take my right as the moderator to ask the first question. Your Majesty, you have been very active in terms of changing the perception of the role of women in the Arab and Islamic world. Is the perception in Europe and in the Western world wrong? What could be done? How? What is your message to this audience?
Well, I think my first message would be that women in the Arab world do not fit into one stereotype. And I think that's something that's happened very often, is that people just tend to think that all Arab women are the same, that they all have one style of dress, one style of thinking. People always refer to the headscarf, the hijab, and almost reduce the identity of the Arab woman to the single item of clothing. And I think my message would be to look beyond that women in the Arab world are very different. Women in different countries have reached different levels of progress. In Jordan, for example, we have women active in many different fields. We're not where we want to be, but we're still working very hard and we're moving ahead. So my message would be that to embrace Arab women, to realize that in different countries, there are different women who have made progress in different fields, and they really need the support of the international community and the support of their own leadership to move forward. We have been, the progress of the Arab world has been hindered by the lack of sufficient contribution of women in the Arab world. So we need to work very, very hard to make sure that they're able to contribute to their societies and to the livelihood of their families.
Who would like to raise a question? Yes, please. Can you identify yourself?
I am Jihad Al-Khazin Al-Hayat LBC. Your Majesty, can you recall how many official functions you were involved in last year, and what was the cause closest to your heart?
That's a tough question. I actually have no idea how many official functions I was involved in. But I am very honored to have had the opportunity to participate in many functions all over the world and to work on many areas that are very, very important to my heart. And I think the major trend that I have seen over the past 2 years is this need to have dialogue between the East and the Western world. I think that there has a certain gulf has emerged, and there is a lack of dialogue taking place. And that is something that we have to work very, very hard on. And all of us in the Arab world, I think, need to do a better job of getting our message across and connecting with people, with the rest of the world. And at the same time, I think the Western world needs to connect with us and listen to our needs and our situation. So I think that the events that have been closest to my heart have been the ones where we've had the opportunity to have this kind of dialogue.
Yes, please.
Your Majesty, my name is Rajshri Pati from India. Could you tell us a little bit about the life of the average Jordanian woman? Are they predominantly working, and if so, working in what areas? And the schooling and the health facilities for generally that is in Jordan. So few of us know about the life in Jordan. Thank you.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, different women in Jordan have different kind of lifestyles. There's no set mold for the Jordanian women. But we have women participating, for example, in business, in the private sector. We have women in government, in parliament. We have women judges. We have women in our armed forces. So they have made. We have women in a lot of different spheres. So there are different levels of progress. But as I said, we're not necessarily where we want to be. There's a lot of work that we still need to do to have the full participation of women. But the most important thing is to make sure that we are moving. Now, you might not be moving at the speed that you want to be moving at, but as long as there's progress being made, that is very important. The leadership is very much behind the progress of women because we understand that we cannot reach our full potential without tapping into the creative potential of our population. So that is something that we're very determined to do.
Your Majesty, you have used in your speech the expression moral passion. And moral passion is based on values. And as you just mentioned, Your Majesty, you are traveling a lot, so you know the Western and the Islamic world. Do you feel we can establish a situation where we really share the same values?
Well, the reason why I mentioned the issue of the moral passion is because one dangerous phenomenon that I have noticed recently is that people are becoming very cynical about values like peace and tolerance and freedoms. If you talk about the Middle East, for example, everyone will tell you, oh, no chance, that's not going to be solved. And when you think that there's no hope, then you stop making an effort. And I think not trying is one of the worst things we could do. Because in our interconnected world, there are no zero-sum games. It's not that somebody's going to win and somebody else is going to lose. It's all about all of us win together, or we all lose together. And I think once we come to terms with that, we will realize that we all have a stake in trying hard to solve some of the conflicts in other parts of the world. And that will create a common value system, if you will. I think that there has been, over the past couple of years, there has been a kind of a global moral consciousness that has emerged. We need to tap into that. The world is more plugged in now because it is so integrated. I mean, for example, there's been a lot of talk about the war on Iraq. And one thing that has struck me is how plugged in the international community is with this particular issue at the grassroots level. And I think that this is because now we have the technological means, we have the media, the information is so readily available to us, the people are more knowledgeable about their world. Now, if we can harness that energy into creating a common value system, as you said, then that will do the world a lot of good.
So there's one last question.
Thank you very much. Alfredo Espinosa from the Mexican Rural Development Foundation in Mexico. Your Majesty, you spoke with great respect and admiration of the late King Hussein. I'd like to ask you if there is any queen that has been like a role model for you, and if so, why?
When I think of role models, they don't necessarily have to carry a title, actually. Titles are just titles and they come and go. And King Hussein was a role model to me because of the person that he was. Because he was someone, as I mentioned, who had basically really seen it all and still maintained that kind of idealism that kept him going right till the very end. And that is what we have to combat today, is people who lose the hope, who lose the will to keep trying. That's something I learned from him. He never lost that will. Even when his body was frail, as I mentioned, he was ill, he still wanted to keep moving forward. He still wanted to do good for the world. That's why he's my role model.
And thought? Your Majesty, we have to come to an end. Professor Wiesel will make tomorrow as a conclusion. I would say, from my side, the conclusion is what you just said. With all the challenges we have been confronted here during the last days, I think the key is never to lose hope, never to lose also an idealism, never to lose the willingness to fight for a better world. But Eli, you can do it much better than I can.
I thought you forgot that I'm speaking tomorrow, not tonight. But I thank you for the opportunity. Queen Rania and I have participated last year in the opening session of the forum in New York. I listened to you then, I listen to you now. I find it symbolic that the real dialogue takes place between human beings, I as a Jew, you and a Muslim, you a queen, I don't know what, anyway. I listened to you with great emotion. You spoke well. I almost said that for us who don't live in monarchies, you give monarchy a very beautiful face.
Thank you.
And this in itself is a story. Again, the conclusion tomorrow. But now I'll tell you a story, Your Majesty. It's one of my favorite stories because it explains what many of us are trying to do. Working and working and working, trying to save at least one human being here, another human being there, one hope here, one hope there. It's not easy, not now, when so many dangers threaten us. The story is the following. Once upon a time, there was a just man who decided to save a certain city. So he went there. He studied, he went to the university probably, and he studied all the social demands that could be posed to him. He studied how to do it with posters and speeches. He came there. So he had a poster, a kind of script, and he went on and on from street to street, from house to house, from community to community, saying, men and women, don't do this, don't make war, don't hate one another, and so on. In the beginning, people listened because it was amusing. Never has a just man came to that city. And years and years and years and years went by, he was still shouting. And then one child stopped him in the street, said, "Poor teacher, you come and you shout and you shout and you shout. Don't you need this? Don't you see it's useless?" I said, "Yes, I know, it's useless." "Then why do you shout?" "I'll tell you why," said the teacher. "In the beginning, I thought if I were to come and shout loud and loud and louder, I would change them. Now I know I will never change them. If I go on shouting, it is because I don't want them to change me. Majesty, don't change."
Oh.